All right. Hey, everybody. Today is Friday. This is episode 13-ish. Not really supposed to be working today, but I wanted to kind of keep this going, keep the momentum going. So I think today will just be a little lighter. I've started not exhausting the visual exploration, but I now pretty much know what's what and have a pretty good sense of everything. There's a couple more things I want to try, but I think it makes sense to maybe step back and think about the narrative and what that's going to look like. Kaylin's here. I think. Yes.
I am here. I even forgot to mute.
Well, you don't have any background noise today, so I didn't even notice.
That's true.
Let's see. So, well, I can't share my screen and my paper at the same time. Let me go to the screen real quick. So also I realized I'm not sharing this Google Doc, but it's my like running mess of everything that's kind of in my head that might not be talked about here. I've gone over it and like we've looked at it a lot, but maybe I'll start sharing that in the description. But anyways, okay, so I started getting into, I just started thinking about the narrative a little bit more, and I've gone over this, but, and we did a little session, was it yesterday? Yeah, we did a little feedback session as a team yesterday. So I think I got some good feedback on directions to take this. So the only thing I've done, I always like to write like a little hook. In this case, I wrote like what I think the intro might be. So like, how am I leading the reader into the story? I actually tried writing this by thinking, do you ever listen to Malcolm Gladwell? His podcast, Kaylin? That's directed at you, not the audience.
I need to improve my unmuting time. Okay. No, I haven't actually. Who is he?
Oh my God, he is a very famous Canadian. Oh, you don't know Malcolm Gladwell he was like a New Yorker. He might still write for the New Yorker. He was in the newspaper biz for a while, and now he's just like, he's written a bunch of books, and he's just like an opinion kind of columnist guy that's written a lot of famous books and has a great podcast right now called Revisionist History.
I think I've heard that before. You might have mentioned this.
I've probably mentioned it. I'm a big fan. Because he's really into basketball also, and also is super nerdy. So yeah, anyways, I wrote this one like I was imagining, because he has these very succinct intros to his Revisionist History podcast, and so I channeled his voice in my head and tried to imagine how he would write this or say this. So anyways, super aside, but this is my current intro, which will definitely change over time. But I've been thinking about, and you know this, the three kind of sections of the story based on all the data we've been looking at. And the three overarching things are, how big of a deal is it when someone dies according to like internet traffic? And that was one of the more surprising things. Like, obviously we found that the spikes are massive. And so that's, I think, how I want to introduce it, because that's a really easy thing to get your head around. And I'll get to the details in a second. But then the second question was really the initial driving question I had, which is, how long do we care for? So basically, what's the half-life? How quickly does it fade out? And then the last thing is, what is the lasting impact? And I'm framing this, I think, more of as like, how was the death as an inflection point? Like, what did that do to the page view, the Wikipedia specific, obviously, page views? Was it the same? Was it more afterwards? I have these other possibilities up here. So just a blip and it returns to normal, more papillary afterwards, a few recurring spikes or blips afterwards, which would probably be more likely in the case of like unnatural deaths, or like if it's a murder case, or the cause of death wasn't revealed till later, that type of stuff. And other ones, like I haven't actually looked at this, but is it actually possible where the spike wasn't actually around the death? Maybe they had a bigger bump somewhere later. So anyways, that's the last chart. Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And let's see. Oh, I started trying to do some writing around the how big of a deal was it. I have it as David Bowie, but I'm definitely going to frame it around Prince now that we binned it around 48 hours. And that's something actually we talked about, I think, just yesterday, not in the in any stream, but we definitely looked at this yesterday when we were looking at how this day after the death announcement was often the biggest, and that depended on the time of death and when it was released. So Prince ends up by far being the biggest. So I have to redo this. Anyways, okay, let's get to the sketching. So you can look at these real quick, but these are like 5 different ways I've been thinking about how we could possibly contextualize the spikes in a narrative sense. So let's go to the pen and paper because that's kind of what I start doing next. So I'll just read these to you while I'm starting to sketch. Let me. Okay. Should be able to see my screen now, hopefully. I mean, my paper.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's see. The first one that I've written down, 2 charts, 1 moving average excluding the spike, 1 moving average with spike and dot for scale. Let me see if I still remember what that means. Okay, well, I mean, actually, I don't even think this is something I thought about this morning, was doing moving averages to smooth out the data. Oh man, I'm going to have to probably reorient this, but well, let me just draw what I was actually kind of imagining. All right, so if this is time. I'm assuming this is upside down.
Yes, it is upside down.
I'll draw it first. So time, if we have the moving averages, it probably looks like, so what was I thinking? I was thinking, let's pretend this is, the middle is the death. So I was thinking like, actually, let me label this 1. Okay. I was thinking it would look something like this. And then there'd be a gap. And then like that or something. And then I was actually thinking that we have one of those kind of picture-in-picture things where this actually is like another chart. And this is starting to get crazy now that I'm actually drawing this out. Okay. All right, can you see that in full? Okay.
Wait, put it down for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so this one's kind of this crazy idea, which would really focus on the everything but the death spike, and then there'd be like this picture-in-picture, which would say like, look, this missing area actually looks like this giant spike when we see it in context. So yeah, I don't know. Actually, the more I look at this now, the more this doesn't seem to be maybe doing what I wanted to do. So let's keep going. I'm going to be wasteful and I'm going to use a new paper for each one. Sorry. All right. The next one I have written down is just spikes of all people. Oh yeah, so this one would be easy. So this one is what it sounds like. Again, let me just draw it for myself. So I just like this one's really simple. I could imagine this one, being some like sort of scrolling driven thing where the only dots we're actually showing is this is the spike, like that 48 hours spike after for each person. So like I could imagine it's like being a scroll driven thing, and like, you know, it's like as you scroll, they come in from left to right, which is, you know, 2015 to 2018. And it's really just showing you the page views during the spike to put, so that's really the most basic possible thing I could think of. The other thing I was thinking is you could also have this, let me just draw this one upside down. You could do something maybe where this fun animation or toggle where it's right here, right? It's on a time axis, and then it does some sort of animation and it stacks them all up. So it actually turns more into like this ranking chart. So right, like Prince would be up here. Which might be neat, maybe, I don't know. And then this one, we could also work in like the whole reference thing. So we could have some line here, which might be like, you know, this is Justin Bieber's average every day. And then you can see like how much higher it is. So this one's like super straightforward. I don't hate it. I think this one could be pretty easy to work in some like good storytelling with scrollytelling and annotations and images and that type of thing.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. This was one. Whoa. 1B. Let's go on to the 4. All right. 1C. I wrote spikes with moving average before and moving average after. So this one, actually, I was thinking of these like triangles. So again, same thing. And actually this one, it could be either, you know, the x-axis could be time, or it could just be everybody centered like we've been doing. But I was thinking there'd be a dot for the spike. Oh my God, I can't write upside down. That's it. So it'd be a dot for the spike. And then it would be a dot for, so actually this wouldn't be temporal, I suppose. There'd be a dot for moving average before and a dot for moving average after. I suppose it could just be it would be the median. Okay. And so this one, I'm trying to actually imagine, I can actually see this one being kind of like, this one could actually be almost joypod-ish, because you could center the date always around the death. And then we've got, and this one actually kind of gets into number 3, which is what is the lasting impact? The problem we're going to have here again is a scale problem, right? Where, and now that I think about it, we're going to have the whole problem with the scales. But I kind of like that it creates this triangle of these 3 points, right? Before, after, and the spike. But yeah, again, the scale problem. Yeah, this one might not work. 1C. Moving on. And this is why I draw it out, because like if I think something sounds so hot in my head and then I do it and then it sucks. Let's see. 1D perspective. Start with the average animating, then change scale to spike. Oh yeah, I think this one's gonna be cool. All right, so this one actually, I was thinking, let me draw it upside down. Again, normal scale situation, right? That's shares, and then this is time. So this one, I'm actually thinking I draw in the moving average. And the reason I keep saying moving average versus like the raw views is because I think it'll just smooth it out and show the trends a lot better. Plus, I've always been wanting to do a moving average recently, and this is perfect because it's time data that has a bunch of arbitrary spikes. Anyways, so I'm thinking like you visually see this kind of animation. And this is like, oops, I didn't mean for it to dip down. So you ignore this. So you see the line animating in, like, and like the date ticking up, and then we basically say, oh, and maybe this is actually more variable, and it's so actually let's cross this out. Let's pretend this is like 0.01% of views or something, 0.001. So we kind of see it like this and this, and we see some little trends. And then we say, oh, and then he dies on this day. And then all of a sudden we see the scale change, right? And we see this thing turn into this thing. And we lose all that variance that we saw before, and we see it shoot up. And basically you see that like, oh, he was like, again, I'm pretending we're using Prince as an example. We see how it was like really popular, and like we can highlight even points. Like maybe there was something that happened, like an album was released. Obviously that's not the case, but an album was released and you saw like a little uptick. And then you see that is actually like a blip compared to the spike that actually happens. And that way we kind of get some of the real fluctuation in the data before the spike, but then like it's kind of contextualized. I think I'm into this one.
I like it.
Okay. One.
I like this one and the first one so far. Even though I was really sold on the Joe plots when I saw them.
The joy plots.
Yeah, I put a comment in the doc that was like, this would be so, because I don't think we've done a joy plot. Have we done the pudding? We did it. Well,
we've done it for a client project,
but not on an editorial project.
No, and like
I want one so bad.
Okay, let's. I'll keep that in mind as we keep sketching.
Okay, it would be a new addition.
New edition.
First.
All right.
First.
So let's see. Next one is spike as percent change from median before barbell. Oh, so I forgot to mention. We talked about filtering out the people because the percent change was really kind of skewed for these really low ones. So I actually filtered our population a little bit more to make it so people who had like super low page views on average before don't end up in the data set. So people that weren't actually famous. So this is really just going to more focus on famous people. So I think the percent change is actually still in play. So this one's pretty straightforward. I was thinking of, it's kind of like the first one, but instead of focusing just on actual like total shares, it would actually just be more of a, what would be? It would be like a barbell plot kind of thing, I think, where you'd have the spike and you'd have their like median, and this would be the spike. So then you could actually do it so, so let's see. So you could still see the spikes, but then it would actually be the length of the bar could actually be relevant, or you could do it so we just did it so, or it was actually just more like bar chart or whatever style where we're just visualizing that percent change, right? So this one would be interesting because it would show us, this one's slightly different narrative. It wouldn't just show us like who's the biggest deal. It would show us who was disproportionately like talked about essentially. This might be actually like a slight narrative deviation, which might be worthy of its own chart. How do you spell disproportionately? There it is. Yeah, does this make sense, Caleb?
It does make sense. I like these plots.
So yeah, I'm not sure this one's as useful to introduce how big of a deal they are, because you lose that by, I mean, because basically you're going to be like, oh yeah, look, Prince had, 900 times more page view than his average day, which is interesting, but maybe not as interesting as being like he was 2% of all traffic.
I definitely think the percentage more interesting, especially.
Wait, you like that? You like? Oh, sorry. You don't mean percent change. You mean like actual percent shares.
The actual percent shares, because like we said, if you attach a number to that, that's like just an extraordinary amount of page views.
Yeah. So I think this might be like its own. This would be maybe like a bonus, like 1B chart where like we're like, well, Prince was the most, but actually the person that was disproportionately viewed the most was like X. So maybe this is almost even possibly like a table, or just these, because this is just a single number. So I'm going to call this one 1E. Whoa, upside down E. Okay, so that's it for the first section. I'm going to say that I liked, so 2, I think I'm going to strike this one out. Actually, I'm not going to strike them out. I like E, which was pretty much just like the straight up dots and maybe like fading them in or normalizing them to rank them, like that one. I also think the perspective where it animates in and puts a spike in context is super potentially interesting. And also this last one as a possible bonus chart / table. That's two. All right. Next up is the how long do we care for? So the first thing I wrote was heat map calendar, how many days until it returns to normal. So this was actually something that Jan suggested. I was doing more of like one of those heat map things. You guys, so I think about, actually I can just show you. So it'll switch back. Example is, oh no, where is it? So like this is what I think the idea was. This is a heat map calendar, right? With the color being the more or less. So there's a few ways I think to think about this. So the heat map calendar, because it's mostly about how long we care for. And what we've seen with the data, right, is it's not that it's not a very long period of time. So I was actually thinking it could be more like, so let's pretend this is getting sloppier and sloppier as I add more. So it could be like each of these blocks represents a chunk. So whatever, like every 48 hours, 48-hour chunks after death. So this would be like death right here. I don't know why I drew it as an arrow. That's death. So like in theory, you'd see something. So this could actually just be a bar, like a horizontal bar chart. But there's going to potentially. So let me back up. Days until it returns to normal. First, I have to define what normal means. We have the median. So we could just say, until it returns within like a deviation of the median, or like within 100% more. Something that mathematically makes sense. And so we could actually just have a straight up number of bars until it dips below. So we could actually just have something like that and then have that for each person. I think it could be more interesting if we integrate this heat map calendar idea where there's actually, because there could be some fluctuation. So it could be like this one's super dark, this one's kind of dark, this one's actually super dark again. And then we see it. So then it's kind of two things at once. It's a bar chart and a heat map calendar. And then actually it could be neat because then it almost turns into we could almost turn into a histogram where you have one of these for each person. So we could have like this thing repeated a bunch of times. And then we could see that maybe collapsed or something, or turn it into, or like align them so you can see like the tallest, the smallest. That could be kind of fun actually. Okay, so that's 2A. Does that make sense to you, Caitlin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very clear.
Very clear.
I like heat maps.
Yeah, and then we'd be relying on color and, what's it called? We wouldn't be relying on spatial stuff, which is what everything has been up to so far. And this alternative version, which is the same idea, but it would be actually a line chart. So I think the only way to make this work would be, again, we say like death happened here, death, and we don't include the big spike, but this is everything after that. So then in this case, we'd be showing like, when does it return to this threshold, which we'll say like we'd more visually define the threshold, which we wouldn't have in the heat map thing. And so in this case, right, it would be like, and then it'd be like, hey, right here. And then we could have this right as small multiples. I guess this could be a joy plot, so to speak, but maybe not, because it's not as much as about the spikes in this case, which is kind of where the joy plots shine. Yeah, I feel like small multiples would probably actually end up making the most sense for this. Mm-hmm. But this one would be really straightforward and I think really easy to understand, because it would basically just be like the length of the line. Like the further left it goes, or right, the longer it lasts. So I think this one actually might work slightly better, but the other one might be fun as well. Oops, this one's 2B. Okay. Feels on those, Caitlin? Anything that you want to react to, or?
No reactions right now. I'm good.
And then the last one was the lasting impact. Also totally relevant is, let me see if I have this on here. Check what I got. You probably can't hear this. But this is actually the scene from Westworld where the guy says that quote. And I'm totally going to work this into the thing. That's he whispered this in his ear. Oh, you can't see. Oh, wow. You're not even looking at my paper.
No.
That's why you're laughing at me.
I know. I was like, wait, what's going on?
What is he talking about?
Yeah, it's just like...
I was showing this video.
This makes so much more sense. I'm like, he's going to draw the scene? Yes. I love when YouTube videos are incorporated, or like clips like this.
So yeah, he just said this quote. He whispered this in his ear.
I love it.
As long as the last person remembers you. So I feel like that you could set up this section.
I love that.
Or actually really this section. Anyways, what is the lasting impact? Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Literally, slope chart before and after median. So this is pretty straightforward. I would just take, I'm thinking a standard slope chart. So we'd have median before, median after, and I'd assume you'd see something like this. So the people that, don't change would be something like that. And then the people that saw an uptick would be more like that. Really straightforward. That's it. Next one, slope with moving 1 week. Oh, so this is what I was trying to do before. But I was trying to include, those aren't even. I was trying to include the spike. So I'm actually thinking we could do a rolling average, but cut it up into two things. So if this is, so basically everybody would be centered. So it would be, 100 days before and 100 days after or something. And so let's pretend this is like Prince. We'd see something like this. And then that line would end. And then we'd see something like this. So I think this would be cool because you'd get the detail, but then like we could make these like two different colors, right? Like a before color and an after color. And so like this is basically where the death happened. So we could actually just kind of have a riffle in time, even though it might actually be not connected. Yeah, so I think this could be cool because we'd see their trends before and after. So I'm kind of into this one. I don't know. What do you think? Does this one make sense, Caitlin?
Not as much as the others.
So basically, this would be the moving average before the death. So you'd actually see the granularity rather than it as like a straight line. And then we'd say like, oh, right here is where the death happened. And then you see what, like it's basically like a fracture in the chart almost.
Got it.
And then you see what the moving average is after the death. So in theory, this would kind of show you the same thing as the slope, right? But the slope is going to turn this into like just a start and an end, whereas this you get the detail in between. Mm-hmm. And I just really been wanting to do moving average. Yeah, and then I guess 3C, I just said highlight archetypes. So I think that would be almost more of a toggle or something, or color coding, where this archetype would be like number 2, where like this line is much higher than this line. So maybe they'd either be color coded that way, or like just have them all in the same plot and only reveal the ones that did this. And like the other one would be if they stayed the same and the spike was just a blip. So that would look something like this. So I think that's more of just like an interactive feature on top of this chart. Yeah. Okay. So anyways, that's everything. My drawings are madness. They're so unuseful to anybody except for myself.
I appreciate them. I like them.
Good. All right. I guess let's see. So let me go back to my Google Doc. I know you have to bounce in a second, right?
Yeah, I have a meeting at 3.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm torn on the heat map thing. I don't know. You didn't seem to have a preference one or the other, did you?
I like the heat map. I like heat maps in general, but I know you like the line charts.
I know, but like it could also be the case where everything ends up being a line chart, which might need a little diversity. So
that's like true. A line chart is definitely going to be in there, in one of them.
Well, let's see. if I go with just the spikes for the first one, then it would actually just be like a dot plot or a bar chart kind of thing,
Mhm.
which means I'd probably be more inclined to line chart it here.
Yeah.
However, if I go with the moving averages for the lasting impact and work that in, that's certainly like a line chart. In which case, I could potentially have line chart, line chart, line chart. If I went with the start with the animate the thing in and then show the scale.
Mm.
Actually, you know what? I might combine these two. I'm thinking like, what if
I was about to say, because I do like that first option, but I like the animation.
so what if I introduce it by starting with like just prints and showing the whole perspective, and then when it shows you that once like that, spike comes in and shows you the dot there, it shows you the dots for everybody else.
Yep.
Because we've already introduced that, okay, the lines are pretty much meaningless at this point.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan, and I liked when we were talking about that a few weeks ago in our feedback session, like breaking it down and showing one person before showing, because I mean it's a lot of data to absorb at once, and I think starting with prints, yeah. Anyways, I'm a big fan. I like that, and then
Yeah.
I like because I mean then in this would check all your boxes, tick all your boxes, whatever. Uh, talking fast, I have to leave in a minute.
I know.
Because then I like the line chart, and then you would get the moving average, and then you would like fulfill your greatest dreams with this article. And then just like the heat map would get, I'm probably going to do a heat map in like 2 seconds. So
All right. Well, I'll let you run. Thanks for your
cool.
input.
No problem.
I'll wrap up with
Bye.
everybody here. See ya.
Cool. See you later.
All right. So I think let me write out what I was thinking here. So I think we start with animating and moving average of one person for death. Scale changes and shows spike. Yep. And let's see, I think Ilya actually was talking here about doing a small one than a large one. So let me just add this as an option. Option, start with small person. It would still be crazy to see new scale. Then do large person. Okay, so either way, we like do one or two, whatever. And then we say we fade in the rest of the people's spikes. I'm thinking these are maybe like and then let's say fade in the rest of people's spikes, and this will be maintaining maintain real timeline. And then actually, if we want to keep really getting fancy with it, we could do what I said, which is then like squash the x-axis and just like have it more of a, let's see, squash animate x-axis to reveal rank of top spikes. Might not be totally necessary, but maybe it could be cool. Oh, and at some point in here, let's see, add Bieber, and I'm just going to use Bieber, but it could be something else. Add Bieber as reference. Okay, so I think that's like section one. Section two, I'm super not sold on. Hold on, I'm checking a text. Okay. I think I'll probably just end up trying both of these. I think I actually more have a to-do about this, which is actually figure out calculation. This isn't people. Figure out calculation of returning to normal. Because then I can just kind of look at the numbers, and if it ends up being like, 1 day for everything, this might not actually end up being worth it. So yeah, I think that might also just help figure out what type of viz I go with. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that before I even decide choose between heat map versus line. All right, and the third one, I'm pretty keen on doing this kind of before and after rupture. I think it could look pretty cool. So before and after rupture moving averages. I think it adds a little bit more information, and would allow us to also highlight the archetypes as well. So I think that makes most sense. And that I think would be like these super skinny small multiples. So it's, I guess, the decision either small multiples or all on one chart. I really don't think having them all on one chart is going to be super busy because it's like 80 or so. So I think small multiples actually makes more sense. And then I forgot the bonus one here. This like 1B be this barbell / table of percent change who is most disproportionately viewed. All right, so that's it for today. I think when I pick it back up next week, I'll probably just add a couple of these calculations. So I'm going to have to calculate the moving averages and work that into the data, and also calculate this thing here. I imagine that should just shouldn't take too long. So I think most of next week, I'm actually just going to start jumping into the actual presentation, which means getting into our starter template and HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Google Docs for copy, all that good stuff. So, all right, that's it for today. Bye, everybody.